morning, everyone. Welcome to the board September 7, 2018 board meeting. My name is Victor Law. I'm the president of the board. As I call this meeting to order, I would like to advise all members of the public, both present or watching the meeting webcast, that the board is a consumer protection agency subject to the Open Meeting Act. Members of the board may be using an electronic copy of the meeting materials. So please be advised that such members are using the device for this purpose, and they are not communicating with each other via email or other electronic means. Now, I'd like to remind everyone present who is interested in receiving continuing education credit to remember to sign in and out on the, I think the designated sheet is outside the room. So make sure you sign in and out. This meeting is being webcast, so we respectfully request that when called upon to speak, please come to the speaker's table and speak directly without the microphone. This will ensure those individuals watching the webcast are aware of all discussions and actions. As indicated on the agenda, the board will convene in closed session. The board intends to do so at the conclusion of hearing the petitions for reinstatement or other reduction of penalties. Upon conclusion of closed session, the board will reconvene in open session and will adjourn the meeting in open session. But this portion of the meeting will not be webcast. So I thank you all for attending, and I look forward to a productive meeting. Now I would like to take a roll call and establish a quorum. Let's start from my left-hand side with Ryan.
Ryan Brooks, public member.
Albert Wong, professional member.
Ricardo Sanchez, public member.
Greg Lippy, public member.
And I'm Victor Law, professional member.
Stan Weiser, professional member.
Maria Sepa, professional member.
Okay, a quorum is established and meeting is now called to order. First of all, I'd like to thank you, West Coast University and School of Pharmacy, especially the Dean, Dr. Ressa Taheri. Dr. Dean is right there. Thank you, Dean, for accommodating us here. This is part of the first project that I started as a president, that I want to come to the School of Pharmacy for one of these petitioners' meetings, so the students could come to try to attend, as well as the pharmacists around the area, so they don't have to travel all the way to Sacramento, and they could sit in and hear some of the things going on, how the petitioner made the mistakes, and how they want to come in to try to reinstate the license. So I thank you all for coming today. All right, second item on the agenda is public comment on items not on the agenda or agenda items for future meetings. Anybody? Okay, please come forward.
Yes, this is the seat.
Let's see. That'll be it.
All right. Hi, Robert Stein from the KGI School of Pharmacy. I want to talk a little bit about a potential agenda item for a future meeting, and that is with respect to the CURE system. I was at a conference teaching some pharmacists about the law, and one of them mentioned an issue that he identified, and I think it's a serious one, and it's a patient care issue. And that is that transactions that go to cures when a prescription is filled, that doesn't necessarily mean the patient actually received that medication. What's happening is most of the major vendors of pharmacy systems actually use the date that the prescription is processed, in other words, filled. But that can sit in a will call area and never be picked up by a patient. Now we know that if the medication is not picked up and it sits in will call, it gets returned to stock, and if there was an insurance payment, it gets reversed at that time. There is no corresponding transaction type going to cures to reverse that fill that was never actually dispensed. This can result in providers believing that a patient is using medications inappropriately when in fact they aren't. So I would like to have the board have this as an agenda item for a future meeting to discuss as to how we can rectify that situation.
Okay. Thank you.
Quick question for you. Why don't you just modify the software to say build and then picked up?
I think that would be easier said than done, and unfortunately,
That's an understatement.
yeah. And I sent Jenny a kind of a white paper on exactly what the workflow issues are, and that there currently is no method for a pharmacy to reverse electronically. There's a manual process that involves contacting Atlantic Associates, manually editing a file, and contacting DOJ, and then maybe in 2 or 3 months, the transaction gets removed from FERS. So there's still a big problem there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll send to the enforcement committee to take a look at it. Thank you, Dr. Stein. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Kathleen Hilbesink, and I would like to bring to the Board of Pharmacy's attention an issue regarding the supervision of intern pharmacists on interprofessional education. Currently, ACPE, the accreditation agency, mandates that all students participate in interprofessional education in curricula in both the pre-clinical and clinical setting. In order to do that effectively, our students need to be able to participate on interprofessional teams under the supervision of healthcare providers with an overlapping scope of practice for the activity being conducted. Because that's not possible, it is impractical to have a pharmacist and an intern on every interprofessional team to supervise them. And so our students are experiencing difficulty in participating in things like home visits to patients' homes or going to student-run clinics where the supervising healthcare provider might be a physician or a nurse practitioner or a PA. So I'm asking that the Board of Pharmacy follow the example of Colorado and implement regulations that allow intern pharmacists to be supervised by a healthcare provider whose scope of practice covers the activities being done for the purpose of school-arranged interprofessional education. And I have written it up for you.
Okay, all right, thank you. With the issue with the licensing committee, so thank you, Kathy. Any other public comment? Come on down, Stan.
Hi, Stan Goldenberg. Chiming in along with what Bob was saying concerning the CURES program, on October the 1st, there is a requirement for all physicians to check the CURES program before they prescribe any controlled drug, C2, 3, 4, etc. I'm trying to address the challenges that the physicians face in the long-term care arena. The object of CURES, as we know, is to make sure that we're not supporting anyone's habit. In the long-term care arena, there's a very strong history of that patient being in that institution, not going to other pharmacies. There's usually one physician that sees them, and I was hoping that the board could take a look and see if for an institutionalized patient there could be some modification to that October 1st requirement for every controlled drug. It would, it's a challenge to get C2 drugs or C3 drugs to these patients in the first place. And these patients have a very strong need for pain medications, whether it's for an ongoing arthritis or an acute problem. And I think it would greatly benefit the outcome for the patients to get that medications on a more timely basis if there was some type of waiver. And if that could be placed in front of a committee, I'd be more than happy to attend those committee meetings, especially with some long-term care physicians, and try to work out some type of compromise. Thank you very much.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other public members? Okay, seeing none. All right, let's move on to agenda item number 3. Discussion and consideration of Business and Profession Code, Section 4008, relating to the board's employment of legal counsel. let me give you a little background here. Senate Bill 574, Chapter 429, Statutes of 2017, amended Business and Professions Code Section 4008 to establish the board's authority to hire its own legal counsel. So subsequent to enactment, as part of the January 2018 board meeting, the board directed staff to begin the recruitment process to hire its own legal counsel per the provision in SB 547. Consistent with the board's directive, staff submitted the recruitment package to the department. And the update now is, since that time, the board executive staff have met with the department, which is the DCA department, to discuss the recruitment. In fact, more frequently, me and Vice President Greg Lippy met with the DCA Director, Ravillo, Ryan Markroff, the Deputy Director of Legal Affairs Divisions, and also Grace Ripple Rodriguez, the Assistant Deputy Director, Legal Affairs Divisions. So as part of this meeting, the board leadership was advised that the current administration does not support a decentralized legal counsel model. So in lieu of the board hiring counsels that would report directly to the board's executive office, the DCA is offering a compromise proposal. So under the DCA proposal, the department would establish a limited term attorney position that would enter into an MOU with the board to fund the position. Now, DCA would complete the recruitment for the position, but would allow a member of the board staff to participate in the recruitment process. The attorney would be an employee of the department and would report to the Legal Affairs Office for supervision. However, this attorney would be dedicated exclusively to the pharmacy board's work and would be available to work only at the office part-time. So board leadership is comfortable with the DCA proposal and is presenting this alternative to the full board for its consideration. Now, should the board agree to accept this DCA proposal, recruitment should be expedited. So, should the board wish to reconsider its action from January 2018 board meeting, and the following language should be used as a motion to facilitate implementation of the proposal. Now, the recommended motion is to table the action taken by the board during the January 2018 board meeting relating to the hiring of the counsel. Approve the DCA proposal to enter into the MOU with the DCA for purpose of establishing an attorney for position, and authorize the EO to carry out the proposal, including by securing the necessary funding to pay for the position. Any discussion on board members? Yes, Dan.
Yeah, I've got a lot to say about this, and I apologize. First of all, I noticed that there's no presentation by the Department of Consumer Affairs or anybody in the presentation to the board. They do too, and again, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, I hold you both in high regard. However, you're not the board. You're the President and the Vice President. It seems fair and reasonable that the board in its entirety get the opportunity to hear a presentation from the agency regarding an issue as big as legal counsel, which I feel is a very big issue, in particular the independence of legal counsel. I'm dismayed that legal affairs doesn't support a decentralized legal counsel model, in spite of the fact that SB 547 allows for it. And you know, there's often issues that legislative issues that the board doesn't support in regards to pharmacy. However, we deal with it because that is the way the system works. And so my apologies to anybody, but the option is there. It's there for a reason. It was recently enacted, and we ought to have the ability and the alternative to go forward with that option. Now, let me continue. And so I think it's critical that if we're going to be considering it, that we should be entitled to at least a presentation from the agency or the bureau that is suggesting it. Speaking specifically about it, accountant, attorney, candlestick maker. I have a lot of trouble figuring out how an attorney can deal with two masters. I understand the position that the Bureau would like to have. The attorney would be an employee of the boards, would be an employee of the department and would report to Legal Affairs Office for supervision. That's pretty significant. I feel that if we're going, if we have the ability, SB 547, to hire an attorney, then we ought to be able to hire an attorney, and the attorney ought to be responsible to us. There's a conflict right here between the DCA and the legislature about this whole thing. Who's to say that there wouldn't be a conflict between the agency and us regarding a legal issue? And we have an attorney who is supposed to be representing us and be our attorney. However, this attorney is being paid for and is responsible and is being supervised by the department. Where is the independence? I don't see independence there. I see an attempt for there to be two masters. To me, I wouldn't do it in my business. I would expect an accountant to be put in that position. I absolutely am uncomfortable, to say the least, with the situation, the proposed situation. I guess I've said enough.
Well, I totally understand your concern, and actually that's exactly what me and Vice President Lee have too. Now the fact of the matter is, our EO and staff actually were working with the department for quite a while, and they were having such a big frustrations of not moving forward on this issue, and that's why she asked for help. And
You need to say
okay,
something.
after me.
Yes.
I
Thank
just
you.
thought you wanted to stop something I was saying.
So that's the primary reason why me and Greg, we were willing to fly to Sacramento and face them directly to see what's going on. Now, during the meeting, we did express all our concern about wearing two hats, who's going to pay for it, the conflict of interest, whatnot's coming from. And I was telling him exactly the frustration we have on all this case based on all these years. I was telling him, I've been on the board for 6 years and we have all these backlog of cases that we should move forward with. Okay. Now, but his position was he understood the problem, but then he mentioned he's been only the director for 1.5 years. So that's the direction he got from his administration, that's not the case. And he's willing to compromise, to give us the 2 years window to see how it works. So this at least he say this is a level 4 attorney giving you guys full time to do all the things. And within the framework, and if that doesn't work, now then I have a recourse to go back and say, listen, I listened to you for these 2 years and it's not going to work. Now, then he will be more than willing to compromise. Right now, he's new in the position and still, well, I'm just not going to do it. So what are you going to do? So he's going to be able to do it prolonging for another period of time.
So we can be stonewalled?
Well, there's something else. This is what they said. They said they don't have the authority at their level to give us that right, that it has to go up 2 levels above and eventually the governor's office. And they said that the appetite for this is not there. So I said, well, if we go through all this and it still has to go up 2 or 3 levels, and the appetite isn't there to give it to us, what we really need is we need the attorney now. We don't want to wait forever. So this is a compromise to get the attorney now, give it the 2-year chance. In the meantime, if it appears that it's not working, we have that time to take it up the other levels.
Well, I don't see where this is a much of a change in our current method. And the will of the board was to look for a change. The first olive out of the jar is always going to be the toughest. So I don't know if any other. It's the truth.
I'll just let it sink through.
It's true.
If you give it some thought, it's not.
If you're gonna eat small ones, I got it.
Okay, all right.
Well, there's one other thing, and that is, remember, the main reason that we want this level 4 attorney is because of the complicated issues that we're dealing with the compounding and various other things. It's not to, it's not for providing legal counsel for us to go against the DCA for anything.
Oh, no, but there are plenty of issues that, anyway, I mean, and minimally, I would like a presentation from those in charge so I could ask them directly. I don't think you should be
That's
required
reasonable.
to defend them.
Okay.
So I want to speak to just one aspect of one of the things that you mentioned, Mr. Weiser, and that's
Can you speak a little louder? Sorry.
No microphone.
there's no microphone. Okay, so I want to speak just very briefly to one of the issues that you raised, Mr. Weiser, because as your counsel, even though I report within DCA, you are my client, and from professionally speaking, as a lawyer, you are my client, and I am very clear about that, and DCA is very clear that I'm clear about that. So, in terms of a duty of loyalty issue, and there are more issues on the table and the other pieces, but I do want to reassure the board that from my perspective, and I believe from Ms. Prudu's perspective as well, you are our client, you are our first duty, and we respect that attorney-client relationship very faithfully.
So what's the big deal?
I can't speak to, so I think it's the where we're housed, but I feel like that's such a core issue for us as attorneys, that duty of loyalty and duty of confidentiality, that I just want to reassure you that in that small piece, there is a reporting relationship, and this is a policy issue about who we report to and the control over the employment and the tasks, I think. But from the when I give you advice, or when Ms. Pruden gives you advice, I do want to just reassure you that
I'm assuming that this is down the road 10 years, and none of us are going to be here.
But
Here on the earth or here on the earth?
Maybe both. Maybe
No,
both,
wait a
right?
second.
no, but
Be careful.
at least we got a good compromise out of this. Is the department head actually promised us that this full-time attorney working for us also will be working with the department to facilitate all and expedite the process for us. I've never heard anybody who said that to me before, all my 6 years on the board. So if I could get that from him, I don't think it's worth it to go over and have them come back and then we'll be questioning them again. That would be like starting from square one again. So I think this is the best compromise we have. And in the meantime, we still have 2 years to still go back to the governor and go, hey, what's the big deal, man? I got you promised to sign the bill, and you're not giving me all the privilege. But before you go that route, we still have the full-time attorney here to devote full-time to do our stuff. And like Laura was saying, that would be our client. The person will be dedicated everything for us. So I don't know how else we could get out of this conclusion.
Hey, Sam, quick question for you. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I'm not in disagreement at all. I'm just trying to figure out what the actual conflict would be. Are you talking about a structural conflict, or are you talking
you
about
asking me?
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, structurally, from
I
a long
can't
time
give you
ago.
a specific conflict, but there have been conflicts between policy conflicts between the Bureau and the board. And I can't enumerate or tell you which, but there have been conflicts. And actually, if you look at it, this is a conflict as well. We're saying that there's a provision that allows us to have an attorney, and we would like one, and we'd like it to be our attorney. And they're saying no, we don't. So there is a conflict. We're saying the law law allows us to have it. There's legislation which has been put forth that we ought to be entitled to it. And the department, for whatever reason they have, are saying, no, you're not entitled to it. We don't want you to have it, in spite of what the legislation says. To me, that's a significant conflict. And there have been other conflicts on policy issues in the past where there has been negotiations that had to take place to resolve them. With regards to the director, I've been on the board even longer than you. There's been multiple directors since I came on the board. And so, I mean, I hope the director stays as long as he wants to stay, and I hope he has a tremendous career with the state. But directors turn over, and views and positions change. So I think leveling out that field as well, where we have our own attorney, we don't have to worry about the mood of the director or what's, which way the wind is blowing that day. I just think it protects us. It gives us what we want, what we need. What's the big issue? I can't find the big issue why we can't do it.
No, I'm not disagreeing whatsoever.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I would like to have our own attorneys in-house for the reason of consistency and longevity. I mean, we're very fortunate we have two incredibly great attorneys right now. Don't want to lose you two, unless you win the lotto and decide to go somewhere else. I understand that. Yes. Just from, and having someone with, tenure who knows his business, been on this board since 2008 for 10 years, and it takes a while to get to know the business of the Board of Pharmacy, and to have that consistency and longevity, I would like to have it there for that reason.
One would wonder if the department wants us to have total independence, or what their position is on independence of the different boards. I mean, this is one issue, but as we go to our next issue as well, it says that we have the opportunity to look for leadership and hire leadership only with the approval of the director of the agency. So it seems to me, I mean, and we have that in this packet as well. So it seems to me that affording us independence, if you will, is something that there's caution about, I guess.
Well, we are a board that exists under the DCA.
I
We're not
understand that.
independent, so, I can see
Victor?
the reason there.
Before we go further, we have a board member who just came in, and could you please identify yourself to the public?
Yes, my name is Amjad Khan, and I'm a fellow board member. I teach law at UCLA, and I'm a partner locally at a law firm.
Thank you, Victor. Albert?
Perfect timing that you're here.
We need an attorney here.
I agree with Stan. I mean, if the law allows us to do it, there's no reason why we should not do it. I mean, like you said, the change of wind, different policy, different director, but once we get our own, it will stay the same. I agree with Stan.
So I have a question for you. It might be a question for Laura. So if the law allows it, and I have not read it, how can the agency block us from implementing the law?
So I can't speak to all the pieces of it, but as a state, I believe, and I don't know what the conversations have gone on, but creating positions within the state are subject to a lot of laws that are within government code that pertain to finance and other pieces. That's not an area that I've been involved in. It's a different piece of it.
So if I hear this correctly,
control agency related is my understanding, but I can't speak.
so if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying they can block it through an administrative process versus a legal process. Not processing direct to hire the person. Is that what I'm hearing?
There is a process that you go through to establish a new position within the state, and my guess is that your executive officer and your assistant executive officer actually know that process better than I do. But you have to create the position and then get approval, I believe. It's not, the state is not a private entity, and hiring and employment matters are not the same as they are in other settings.
Thank you.
It's more complicated.
So here's what I suggest. I mean, in order for us to make a decision, I think it's important for us to really know what the process is, because process matters. And if the process becomes too cumbersome or something we can't avoid, the decision may be made for us. But not knowing that, I don't think we can make an intelligent, thoughtful decision, without having that piece of the puzzle. And so my suggestion is, we identify what that process is. Also, Stan, hear from the agency, and I think we can be more, better educated as a board.
Holly, you have a comment?
Holly Strom, former Board of Pharmacy president, way back in the day. Way back in the day, in the 90s, there was an issue of a firm policy difference between the department and the Board of Pharmacy. And the department was pushing me very hard to do something that I thought was utterly wrong. And they had their own agenda. It wasn't completely clear what it was, but it was clearly in conflict with what the Board of Pharmacy wanted to do. So this is not a recent phenomenon. This is going back decades. So just Stan's not just stirring the pot for no reason.
I would rather not think of I would rather not categorize it as stirring the pot.
Well,
But he usually is. So.
Well, yeah, but in this case,
Yeah.
I get it.
But thank you, Holly. I think.
Well, we understand the issue, and you know that the staff, they were given the instructions since the January 2018 meeting. They were trying to work with the DCA administration. What is today now? This is already September. It's been 8 months already, and they're dragging their feet. So theoretically, yes, Dan, I agree everything with what you said. But then you have to understand practically, you're facing this dilemma. You're working with that administration. And we're under them. We're not by ourselves. We're under the Department of Consumer Affairs. All the hiring and firing process, we still need to go through them. We cannot start our own process of doing anything. So that's why I thought this is a good compromise that we have right now. You still have your recourse of your 2 years term to do whatever you want. But in the meantime, we'll get a full-time attorney, because right now they can still pull Laura Freeman anywhere to any place else, whatever they wish. They never guarantee she's going to be here 100%, dedicated 100% to us. But right now, under this agreement, we have a level 4 attorney dedicated full-time to us to solve the issue first. And then you could still go the back route of clarifying with the governor's office and say, why are we getting the blockage? So I don't know how much better you could do under the circumstances. I mean, not a perfect solution, but I think it's the best compromise that we could get. Go ahead.
Thank you. You're going to have to talk loud.
Thank you. Etsy Rosenberg, West Coast University School of Pharmacy. I think I'm trying to synthesize what exactly is the conversation's about. And there is a difference between an actual conflict and a potential conflict. An actual conflict would be something such as was just described to you by a prior board member that was perceived at the time in the 90s. A potential conflict is what the board is now describing as a possible thing down the line that they're worried about. That does not necessarily impeach or discredit any of the counsel that you currently have. It has nothing to do with any particular representation you have right now. It's a basically lack of confidence in your ability to have an independence from the agency that basically funds you. So I'm just hoping I clarified a little bit of that. You're not insinuating any kind of potential any actual conflict at this moment, but you're anticipating there may be some pressure, difference of opinion, difference of policy, and for the board to really do its job, it needs to be independent. So hopefully I clarified that for you.
Thank you. Any other board members' comments?
Whenever, in the past, when I've worked with attorneys outside of government, talking about potential issues, this is what I tried to avoid. when I would sit with my attorneys or an attorney trying to work on a solution or trying to work on a strategy, I would try to. I would expect my attorneys to put together a plan for me that would avoid potential issues. I mean, I wasn't working for them. I wasn't working with them or looking for their advice to deal with an issue that existed only today. I was looking for advice to help me deal with issues that were either real, perceived, or potential down the road. And I think that's what we expect from legal advice. It's not so much is it going to fix the issue today, in my view. It is it going to fix the issue today as well as protect me in the future.
I think, let me make a motion to accept the compromise, and let's see where we are.
I would suggest that.
Motion by Greg. And a second.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll second. I'm going to vote as a courtesy.
Second by
Yeah.
Ryan. Okay. Any further discussion?
I would suggest that minimally we have a presentation from the DCA or the Legal Affairs Division or whoever, so that the board at least has the opportunity individually to hear from the DCA, to hear from the legal affairs people, and to have answers from them. I don't discredit either one of you, but I feel that your position is not to represent legal affairs, and your position is not to represent the DCA. I think the courtesy is to have them present to us and allow us as board members to make a decision, or whichever way it goes. But I think that's the way the system should work.
Before you vote, I'll just give you an example that currently exists where we've got this conflict set up. With part of the rulemaking, when we develop rulemaking, we have our attorneys in the room with us right now, our two departmental counsels. They help us work on the language, develop where we're going with the reg. When that's done, we compile a rulemaking file, which is part of the process of adoption. That file then goes to our attorneys who sign off on it as board counsel, making sure, yes, this is accurate, this is complete, this is the board's statement, this is where we're going. It then comes back to the board for correction, and this is staff work, not the board work. And then it goes back to the department where the same attorneys take off their hat as board counsel and put on departmental counsel, and then they review it on behalf of the department. There's an example right there of the inherent conflict where they're asked to have two different masters, which not on every case is there going to be a difference. And this particular position is set up to be a policy developer and advocate for the board and hence general counsel, as opposed to someone that's more of the specific departmental discipline process we've got, where we have both the Attorney General's office and we have a role for departmental counsel. That would remain in place. But this is a different position, and I just want to clarify why we have been moving in the direction we have. The department disagrees with that structure, which is why they want to go in a different position.
Well, the essence is the Board of Pharmacy is still under the DCA. Anytime when you're under the DCA, whatever you do, you're still under review by the DCA, unless we are an independent agency. But if that's the case, we have to do what we have to do. But there are two things right now we could do. We could do nothing, okay, and then our attorney Laura, with a subject to could be part-time, whatever the DCA wanted to do, could not be full-time forever, just like before. All these cases been slowed down, delayed. If you want to do it, you could do nothing right now. Or we could take the motion, take a proposal right now, and get what we can get a full-time attorney, at least to help expedite some of the process. And in the meantime, you still could follow the same position, go the back route for the 2 years term, and go to clarify. You still could go back to the governor's office, ask for clarification whether you are empowered with that ability to do that. But rather than you sit here and say, let's go back to square one again. Now, the board started in January 2018, directed staff to do it. This is September, 8 months later. Nothing has happened. You want to go back to square one again to go another 8 months?
Well, there's a third option. We
Yes,
could have a presentation from the DCA.
Maria.
As a new board member, this is all very interesting to consider because there are urgency issues, but there are also policy and precedent kind of issues. and I am very concerned about what Stan is saying, is that we have this right and we have a roadblock that's being placed in front of us. That is very concerning because that creates a precedent. Your argument about timing and the need for having somebody available now is a very pressing argument also. Which one trumps the other is the challenge. And the concern is if we accept the current situation where the DCA is offering a lesser than what we are entitled to, what will happen next? And in 2 years is a long time, and so there's some concerns. I would encourage us to do something that still meets the need of urgency without giving up our role and responsibilities to assure that we have some sort of independent representation. But as a new person, I'm listening to both of your arguments. They're really, really good arguments. How can we do both? And that's not really speaking to the motion. I understand that.
Yep, that's why the urgency right now is if we pass this motion, at least we solve the matter of this urgency. But in the meantime, you still have the recourse of working on the second half. But you take the other route, you leave this urgency matter unresolved. You want to wait another 1.5 years for something that has to be. You can tell them to come back, talk back to them, make another proposal, counter offer again. You know what's going to happen again? Another a month later, nothing's going to happen.
So, a bigger question for you. I'm not quite sure how you're defining the urgency, because right now, if we do nothing, we're status quo.
Yeah.
And so nothing changes. So I'm not quite sure. I mean, we all have different views of what urgency means. Urgency would mean to me, tomorrow the city would, pull our attorneys and do something we don't want them to do. I don't believe that's the case. I don't think they're threatening to do that either. And so I would probably take urgency off the table because I don't think it's an issue for this board. And two, and I'm going to reiterate, it's not just about conflict. That is a big issue. Don't get me wrong. It's a major issue we should discuss. But it's also about longevity and experience. And I want to have the ability to keep my attorneys here. They were willing to stay. As we all know on this board how long it takes to get up to speed on all these issues that we deal with. So that's.
Okay, so why don't we just vote and see where we are?
Okay, let's call for the vote. Others in favor and supporting this motion?
Before you do that, do you want to ask for public comment?
Okay, any other public comments? Seeing none?
They're
Okay.
afraid.
Yeah.
Stan can explain a bit more about what you mean by the proposal for DCA. What are you wanting to see from them?
Well, there is a provision that allows us to have an independent attorney. I would like us to be able to exercise that. Have our own attorney.
Stan,
Attorney
sorry, can you
have
raise your voice?
our own attorney. I mean, the provision allows us to have our own attorney. It is in place. And so I see no reason why we can't have our own attorney that answers to us, for whom we are responsible, who's responsible to us. And there's no other, the attorney has no one else that he or she has to be responsible to or work with. It's our attorney. It's an independent attorney working for our board. And I just think it gives us continuity and it gives us some independence with regards to the legal opinions. And I do not feel that our current attorneys have ever, as far as I know, that there's ever been a bias either way in any advice that they've given us. But I don't know. And so if the opportunity is there as far as the legislature is concerned, the flip side of the coin is what's the big deal about having one? But I guess, again, I come from outside of this, and so I've never had to work with, a government as far as getting a particular position in place. But my issue is when I hire an attorney or when I hired an attorney, I was the main focus of that attorney and the only focus. So that's what I'm accustomed to.
And when in my own rule here. if there ever is a conflict, I mean, a legal conflict that we perceive, you come first. The board comes first. You are a client.
But we can't fire you. They can.
Correct.
There's a difference, right?
Although.
Just, I mean, just, it is what it is.
Although, correct. I mean, that's. I just want to be very clear that I am loyal to you. You are my client, and that's.
This is not a personal thing.
Okay.
This is 10 years from today.
Okay.
So there's a
Well,
motion
if
and a
it's 10 if it's
second.
10 years from today, this is only a 2-year deal, so we can run it to bed.
So there's a motion and a second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second, so let's call for the vote. All
Can you
those in,
repeat the motion?
okay, the motion is to table the action taken by the board during the January 2018 board meeting related to the hiring of counsel, and approve the DCA proposal to enter into an MOU with the DCA for the purpose of establishing a level 4 attorney position, and authorize our EO to carry out the proposal, including by securing the necessary funding to pay for the position. So this would be like a part-time, like 2 years position to see how it goes, and then we'll go for the evaluation after that. I mean, he told us the same thing, that yes, the bill granted us that privilege of hiring an attorney, but right now he's new in the position as the chief, and he's not, his department is not authorized, or he would say they are not comfortable in having us hiring our own counsel for now.
But you're providing testimony now, so that's not the motion, because that part
Right.
of the
I'm
verbal
sorry,
communication, that was
I
verbal
did
and that's not in writing.
Okay, no,
Correct?
That's just a
Correct.
motion.
Okay.
Okay, that's just a motion.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
I have one more comment. I believe that if we have the right to do it, we should do it now. 2 years from now, I will not be here, you will not be here. I think this point will be a different opinion. So I think we should fight for it now. It's for the long term. If it's not right, we should fight for it.
And I would also like to express that I understand the frustration, Victor. It's like having a billboard, given to us several years ago. I mean, actually donated to us so we could put them down south, north, and in the Central Valley, and it's taken forever. It goes through this whole process, and we never get anything done. So I understand what you're going to, what you want. You want to just get it done. Let's move forward, as opposed to just seeing the bureaucracy continue, not getting anything done. Just want to say I sympathize with your frustration.
I'm also of the belief you can do things 2 ways. You can do it right, or you can do it right now. Right?
Yeah.
You can't. So it's my own personal philosophy of life.
But okay, now okay.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Let's call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, you got it. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Okay. All right. Now, do you want to see what is the next course of action?
Yeah,
you guys want to do?
have them come to the board and present.
Yes.
Presentation.
Regarding
You want to-
process,
Okay, you want to bring them back again to?
I think that's the appropriate way to do it. I thank you too for your time and your effort,
Yeah.
and I know that you.
Not personal.
No, yeah, but I think the process would be best if.
Well, we want to hear what they have to say, why they object.
Okay, all right, let's take care of it. All right, let's
Okay.
move on to the next agenda item. That is the executive officers recruitment and selection process. I understand we have a presentation by the Department of Consumer Affairs personnel officers. So could you guys please come up?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having us here today. My name is Nicole Ray, and I'm from the Office of Human Resources, Department of Consumer Affairs.
And I'm Chris Castrillo, Deputy Director, Board and Bureau Services with the department.
So today, I'm here to discuss about the process for hiring an executive officer for the board. So I'm gonna go through the overview of the process, and I know there will be some questions. Most of the questions will be answered through my presentation, but at the end, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to discuss that. In the board package, you have received a copy of the proposed duty statement and a recruitment announcement. Part of the executive officer recruitment is that it will require the board to review the duty statement, approve the duty statement, and review the recruitment announcement, approve that as well. So the Department of Human Resources, we can post the recruitment for 30 days. It is required for us to post the vacancy on the California Department of Human Resources website, and that is a requirement. Other than that, the board can certainly request to have other additional job posting using the same posting through the Capital Morning Report, social media, or listserv that the board currently have. Part of today too is the board gonna appoint 2-member selection committee. You're gonna hear us refer to that as the SCOM. We're trying to shorten things up, but the selection committee, the reason there's gonna be a 2-member selection committee is that the 2 people are gonna work very closely with me through the hiring process. Having a 3rd member will call for a board meeting every time we have a discussion. So for that reason, we recommend that you stay with a 2-member selection committee. Once the job is posted for 30 days, I will send a weekly update to the 2 selection committee members each week, and usually I would do that on Friday. My job at that point will report to them the number of applications that we receive, and I send them copies of those applications so they can certainly start the review process. Our office will also notify them if there's any irregularity in the application, but we do not withhold any application. So the selection committee will have an opportunity to see every application that comes through. The selection committee members, our recommendation is someone who have the time to devote to this task. There will be a lot of reviewing of applications. There will be a lot of discussion between the 2 members, and the selection committee members also will help with developing interview questions. As you all know, interview questions are very important because you have to understand the need of your company, the vision of your company, other issues, challenges that you have, so you can design the right question to select the right person for the job. We can help you with conducting reference checks on each and every candidate that applied for the position, and depending on the number of applications received, the selection committee might do preliminary interviews. This will help narrow down the candidate pool, so the selection committee can make recommendations to bring maybe the top 3 finalists forward to front of the full board for full interview. However, all applications will be made available for the board to review. So if you wish to do that, you can see all applications, including those that were set aside by the selection committee. I will also help with making final arrangement for candidates to come forward for both preliminary interviews, final interviews, prepare the interview packages for the board, and when the board have that full board meeting and select the final list to be appointed to the position, our office will then make arrangement for the person to be interviewed and get approval from the director. actually in the BMP code 4003. That the board, with the approval of the director, may appoint a person exempt from civil service who shall be designated as an executive officer. Once the director approval is received, the person will then be subject to fingerprint clearance. That's part of the pre-employment requirement. The person have to have free and clear criminal record history to be able to assume this position, and we subsequently will work with the board and exec office to determine the swearing-in date, so the person can take the oath of office before they can start. So that's the overview of the process. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Yeah. Will the board have the opportunity to weigh in on the recruitment announcement?
The recruitment announcement is this document, right? That looks similar like this, and it should be in your board package. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, can we still shape that?
Absolutely. Today, if this is where you want to go, it's the time for you to shape this thing. And we can go into each item, the duty statement, the recruitment announcement separately, in order for us to get together and make any edits or take the board recommendation.
Anything you want to add into it, Ryan?
No, I'm just wondering if I have an opportunity of sending my add-ins via, email. I mean, not taking the board's time right now, and then have done 48 hours. I mean, by Monday. Is that possible? If it's not possible, that's okay.
I have a question.
Then,
Are you done?
Yeah.
So a couple of questions. May I call you Nicole? I didn't hear that.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I'm Stan. So where are you posting this?
Where am I posting?
Yeah, it's going to be posted like outside California as well as in California?
It's only going to be the state of California. So the California Department of Human Resources is have a job site called the Cal Career. It's for all the state of California jobs to be put on that. So that's the requirement that we have to fulfill. As I stated, we can also post it on the Capital Morning Report. It's a newsletter that a lot of state workers subscribe to.
Yeah, that was my next question. So is it going out primarily to people who are currently employees of the state?
By a method, the Cal Career is actually for everybody. California citizens who are looking for a state job have access to Cal Career. If you do want to, and actually anybody from other states, if they look at our Cal Careers, they can still find a job out there. And I do know that other boards sometimes they send the same message out through their listserv for their industry newsletter, or people who subscribe to their site.
Stan, I think that so the Capital Morning Report, for instance, not just for state workers. It's a subscription daily site where really anybody who has.
And that's fine.
So it gets that broader. It gets that broader population, and then Nicole made the note about listserv. So I think there are some options for the board to really kind of get the word out.
So back to the process. So and you may have said it, and I just didn't hear it.
No, that's okay.
But my wife claims I don't hear a lot of stuff. So as you're reducing the number of applicants down to a finalist group, does the board get to interview the finalist group if there's 4 or 5 or whatever it is? So we get okay.
The board will interview. Let's just say they reduce it down to 3 finalists. The board will interview all 3.
Okay, great.
But the board will have the opportunity to review all applications that came in. So again, this never happened, but at that time, should the board decide that none of the 3 finalists what they want, they can certainly look back in the other group, or the board can extend the job posting.
And so Ryan mentioned this application for the position of the executive officer. and if I could just, I was curious, I was interested in that under the desirable qualifications and experience, as I went down the bullet points, bullet point number 5, administrative experience. Bullet point number 7, enforcement experience. Experience communicating with all levels. Experience working with and presenting before a large organization. So experience is a significant enough issue to be mentioned in about 5 of these bullet points. I was curious to why bullet point number 1 talks about familiar with laws and rules pertaining to licensure, practice, and education of pharmacists, pharmacy technicians, etc. But it doesn't mention experience there. And when I read that bullet point, I mean, somebody could just read the law book and be familiar with the laws and the rules, but they would have absolutely no experience with pharmacy, pharmacists, pharmacy technicians, drug wholesalers, prescription drug regulation, and all of that. And my curiosity was, if we left it the way it is and didn't ask for experience, I mean, every bureau and every board leader is has expertise in their area, and I don't know if it is if somebody is the head of the contractors board, if that would give them, after they read the law book, the necessary tools that I would hope that they would have to be the executive officer of the pharmacy board. So is there an opportunity to include the word experience in bullet point number 1?
Yes.
Okay,
Here is
great.
the opportunity for you to do that. So where it say familiar with the law, it sounds to me that you're looking for it to say experience with the law.
Well, I think familiar and experienced with the
Familiar
laws
and
and rules
experienced, okay.
pertaining.
Shouldn't you also do that with bullet point 3?
1, 2, 3, ability to effectively negotiate.
Experience effectively negotiating.
I think experience is critical, and so.
So number 3, what would you like for it to say?
Experience effectively negotiating and or communicating.
And also, Nicole, would the posting goes to the National Association of Board of Pharmacy?
I do not post on that. However, that is something we can certainly coordinate with board staff for that piece. For my side, I only do the California Department of Human Resources, the CalCoria site. If the board chooses to go on Capital Morning Report, I will coordinate that with our communication division. Listserv, social media, or the National Association, that will be up to the board staff to assist with that. And if the board subsequently make that decision today to
So
have
we
all that
have
made,
to direct our staff to do that.
that decision can be made today here, and then I coordinate with board staff to do that.
I think it's fair to go nationwide rather than just state of California.
Well, the other thing is, if we go nationwide, they're not going to know the laws in the state of California.
Well, but that again gets back to reading the law book. But I mean, we often have Mark Johnson here from Idaho, and I think he was the EO of the pharmacy board.
He was the EO of Idaho's board for a while.
So, one would ask themselves, Mark Johnson is here all the time. He was the EO of Idaho, and he's now working on behalf of a retail pharmacy company. And would he have the experience and be aware of the rules? Yeah.
I don't think he'd be aware of, specifically California's rules and regulations.
Well,
His application will bore that, right?
Yeah.
Whether
That
that
is
be
what
through
it,
the
yeah, whatever he does is not, I
down
wouldn't
And if
even
Mark
discuss
is
the
listening,
the individual, but.
I was wondering what that was.
I'm just saying the likelihood of somebody from New York coming over here and being able to step in without a long period of ramp up, understand the California rules and regulations, I think, they're at a disadvantage.
I do want to point out that this section, desirable qualifications and experience, is what the applicants will have to respond to in their application. Because as we go into the next page, it will explain what the purpose of this section. Each applicant will have to put a statement of qualifications that tailor and respond to these bullet points.
And do we want a requirement of a minimum of, say, 8 years experience? Because as I said, earlier today, it takes a while to get the Board of Pharmacy and get how agencies work. And so if we had some minimum, I think we can feel stronger that the type of candidate we're getting has that practical experience. And so, I would like to add that bullet item also.
Why 8 years?
Or 5 years.
I think five
5 years is fine. Yeah, we take
That's
that.
pretty standard.
Yeah, so I'd like to
what
add.
I can do is, next to the desirable qualification and experience, I can put in parentheses that applicants must have a minimum of 5 years experience in the following areas, and then it'll go into the bullet.
Sounds good.
And then that experience would expand it a little to include working with a board or an association. Is that okay? Those are my only 2 comments.
Is there anything here that precludes our current staff from applying or being considered or eventually being appointed?
This is an exempt position, so there is no minimum requirement. They are only desirable qualification and experience requirement. So that means that you set the requirement, which we are doing right now. Anybody can apply. That's including board staff, non-board staff.
Okay, great.
Board members?
You might have to step down.
Now wait a second.
Well, it's not in here yet, but I have a feeling that's 2 masters going back to our priorities.
Yeah. And can I ask a quick clarification question? Sorry, I'm going to stand up, project my voice. Do you want that 5 years to be, I'm assuming that's a desirable qualification, is a minimum of 5 years. So it's still going to fall under that desirable qualifications.
Right.
It'll be the first bullet point, maybe.
As opposed to a must.
Correct. But keep in mind that those are also going to be the criteria that any selection committee is going to review. And so if you have somebody that only has a year and then you have somebody with 10, they can use that information to make a decision.
I'm okay with that.
It would be a bullet, it would be like the first bullet underneath desirable qualifications, but it's still a desirable qualification. It wouldn't necessarily preclude the person from qualifying, but it would give a criteria for the committee and the board members to say, yeah.
We're all good. I'm good with that.
After we talk about this today, how soon could this process be going? What's the timeline?
If all is approved, the job posting will have to be approved by the California Department of Human Resources, which is our control agency. And the earliest I anticipate that it can go live, I'll look at the calendar really quick here. Today is Friday. The earliest it can go live would be Wednesday, September 12th.
That's efficient. For a change.
So we better make sure.
I was expecting
This has everything we want.
Yes.
You guys, you all have read the package, so I'm sure you see what's in it. Go ahead, Ricardo.
I was going to see if I can make the motion, have you as the president pick 2 of the select committee members. Make that choice, move the process along.
Why don't I have a recommendation? That is, ask for those who have the time and will want to be on it.
Can
So
I
you know.
interrupt you? I think we are currently working on this. Let's finish
Finish
this
that
first
first. Okay, all right,
before we
finish that
move
first.
to the next
The
step.
motion, okay.
Okay.
Under the desirable qualification and experience, the first bullet will now set 5 years of experience working with board or association. The second bullet, which was formerly the first bullet, will say familiar and experienced with the laws and rules pertaining to licensure. The former third bullet, which is now the fourth bullet, should set experience to effectively negotiate and or communicate. So far, those are edits that have been made by the board. Does anybody have other edits?
If I can re-edit, I'm assuming when we say experience working with regulatory boards, may I insert the word regulatory in front of board? I
Sure.
think that was the intention, but.
Yes.
Okay. Because sometimes we forget on this side of the table what it's like to not be in state government. And I do have a quick suggestion when we're done with the announcement on the duty statement. But I want to make sure I don't interrupt.
So on page 2, if you can please move to the second bold portions with the header, interested persons must submit the following. Number 1, this is the statement of qualifications. So given the multiple bullet points that we have under desirable qualifications, I would recommend that you allow the statement of qualification to be a minimum of 3 pages. Any less of that is not sufficient space for any individual to be able to express their qualifications.
Should we say minimum 3, not to exceed 10?
Absolutely.
There's people on the search committee.
And you do want to put in that cap because you don't want them to give you a whole novel to read.
Right.
10 pages is
Well,
a lot.
you pick a number because you do this all day long.
Yeah.
So a reasonable number that gives them an opportunity.
So, would it be okay if I recommend that a statement of qualification not to exceed 5 pages?
Good. Minimum of 3, not to exceed 5.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Well, do you want to have a minimum?
Yeah. That's the recommendation we need you to.
Not to exceed
But I
5
think
is fine with me.
If you cap the 5, then if a person doesn't have a whole lot of experience, you're
Yeah.
going to see a single page, and then it's quicker to eliminate.
Right,
Yeah.
and then the selection committee can use that information and make its decision
Because if
accordingly.
If it has to be 3, they'll just keep repeating themselves through 3 pages or something.
Or it's 54 print type.
Yeah.
That's right, we want at least 12 point pass.
That's important.
The number 2 standard requirement, which is the state application, that STD 678, that is a live link when we put it online, so people can click on it and pull up the application. Number 3, again, that's standard, a resume or a CV, just a standard, and actually not a slash. I'm going to change it to a resume or a CV. And number 4, this is optional. I'll leave it for the board to decide. Typically, when in the past, when we do executive officer recruitment, oftentimes we contact their references that they provide, and we do not get a return call. And usually we've been in a position where we're unable to finalize that for the board. So we're still going to do reference checks for the board. However, I added that we'll make the applicant submit also a minimum of 3 letters of professional reference along with their application package. So if you wanna leave it in there, we will leave it in there.
Sure.
Okay, anybody else have any comment or edit in this part? So what I have right now is the application package must have one, a statement of qualifications not to exceed 5 pages that address the desirable qualification and experience. And 2, state application, 3, resume or CV, and 4, minimum of 3 letters of reference. Thank you.
Yeah, if you'd like to, you can make a motion to approve it with those amendments.
Make that motion,
Okay,
Mr.
all right,
President.
motion by Stan to approve,
Second.
second by Greg. Any further discussions? Any public comment? If not, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, motion carried.
Thank you. So the second piece we're looking at is the proposed duty statement for the executive officer. We work with Ginny on the duties as well to make sure that we bring the duty and the task statement to current. So it is available for your review. If you have any edit or comment, please let me know.
I do have a couple quick comments,
Go ahead.
now or later, as you wish.
Go ahead.
There was 2 specific authorities that pertain to the executive officer's authority to issue cease and desist orders that I actually would recommend be incorporated into the document somewhere, specifically with respect to sterile compounding facilities that are found to be non-compliant and unlicensed facilities.
Right.
So I would recommend that be included in probably in the duties themselves or in the authority of the executive officer.
In the duties, I think.
Yeah.
So can I have the exact language and where it needs to be placed?
Doing it well.
Put me on the spot. So I think that it would fall under under specific assignments in the second bullet point, the 25%.
So is it on page 3
On
of 6?
page 2 of 6, at the beginning of 2.
Okay.
That bullet for the 25%. And Ginny,
You want a home for this, let's find it.
yeah. So I would add a new bullet that says issues when necessary, cease and desist orders. And then there's 2 sterile compounders whose violations pose immediate threat to the public health and safety. And 2 facilities operating without a license. Okay, I can provide that to you.
Sure.
If the board is comfortable with it. And then the only other change that I would make, probably particularly, it may not be an issue unless you're recruiting outside of state employment, but under other information where you have the standards for fingerprinting, I would also add the director's authority to approve, because it's an all stop if you don't get that, because it's a statutory requirement to get the director's approval. And it is mentioned earlier in the duty statement, but it's not listed as a requirement. So I would just add a one-liner that says this position also requires the incumbent to take an oath of office prior to employment. I would probably put it right above that and say this position requires the approval of the director of the Department of Consumer Affairs.
So, under C, supervision and exercise. I'm never quite clear on what the executive officer can do with regards to hiring and dismissing employees. And is that something that should be in here?
In this particular case, yes, because there are 3 positions that I have direct control over. They are at-will employees to me. So that's our 2 chiefs of enforcement and the assistant executive officer. And so they change, or they're subject to the approval of the executive officer. You hire the executive officer then has 3 positions that are separate and independent from civil service.
So that probably would be informational, but I think it should be there.
Okay.
So, what was the?
You need to expand a little bit into the second sentence in your bullet C.
Okay.
And 2 CEA's level, who serve at the pleasure or something, pleasure of the EO. That's kind of where you were going with it, not?
I think it's the ability to take all
Bring in your
actions
management
related
team.
to the employment of those individuals, I think.
I think I would recommend that we don't put the number. I mean, we can certainly put like the CEA, but then the numbers of CEA
that's a good
might
point.
change.
So,
Not for purposes of this, unless we suddenly have a massive cut.
but I think Nicole's anticipated the
Well,
opposite.
we
It could go the
normally,
other way.
yeah, we normally will put like for example, you supervise approximately 180 staff. We will never want to put like you supervise 180 staff. So,
But we say that in here about 130 somewhere.
I thought you say approximately.
Over 100.
Yeah, we want to keep that number flexible.
The board's call, so I don't.
What about something like oversees and manages all
So we need
CEA
executive
level appointees
of the board?
Of the board.
I just want to remind you, we don't have microphones and people might need to listen in the back.
Was that me? Was that me too?
Everybody.
It was one of the 2 of us. I don't know. My voice usually carries.
Thank you.
And these percentages were put together by you?
I reviewed them and adjusted them.
Okay.
I would like to make a suggestion, however, we don't know where the date on the form came from because the board did not create a duty statement. This was about the time we added chiefs of enforcement, the 2 chiefs of enforcement. So that, my guess is that's when this duty statement was generated. But the effective date at the very top of the form on page 1, I suggest we change that to maybe 9/2018.
It's a corner right here. That's actually not pertaining to the duty statement. That's it was for the format, the HR 041E.
Really?
That's
Okay.
when it was established.
So it's a format and not a content.
It has nothing to do with the content of this. It's a form number, and it was newly developed in January 2016.
So I think what I hear is maybe what we should have is a footer that says Pharmacy Board Executive Officer Duty Statement Revised.
We do have that at the very bottom.
But I would recommend it be on every page because it's confusing. I agree.
Okay.
I can see what your
Okay.
concern is.
So we can certainly put the footer, because at the very last page, page 6 of 6, our duty statement format was put revised and adopted by the board at, and then we insert the date of the
Perfect.
board meeting in there.
That way the board can maintain control over it in the future as well.
Absolutely.
Which we don't
Save
have
it.
now.
Save it for later. It's a good idea.
But I think having it on every page.
Yeah, that's
This is
the format.
housekeeping.
That's format.
Does anybody else have any other comment or edit?
Okay,
So,
do we
let
need a
me-
motion?
Let me run over the cap right here and before we go.
Alright.
So on page 2 of 6, under the 25%, Laura make the recommendation that she will provide the language regarding the CMDC matters, and some other language. On page 5 of 6, under section C, supervision exercise, right after the first sentence, we will insert the executive officer, the EO oversees and manages all career executive assignment levels at the board.
I have one other curiosity, and I don't want to interrupt you. As I went through this again, we don't mention that the position is going to be open until a certain date. So is that an issue, putting in a date when the position is going to be, that we would expect to be the start date?
You're talking about the posting, Stan?
No, I'm talking about, so let's assume, getting back to the fellow from Idaho. So
we have an effective date of appointment. So when the person is hired, on page number 1, it has the effective date of appointment. This is talking about after all the approval and pre-employment clearances received.
Okay.
We have the date, so that will be the effective date to be entered.
So could, I guess I'm not quite sure what Jenny's exact time frame is, but assuming that Jenny's retirement date is January 1st, 2019. So then would we want to say that the position is going to be available on January 2nd, 2019?
We don't put it that. We don't put that on the duty statement because let's just say, for example, if you hire a new executive officer and the person's start date, this is just for conversation. The person of start date is say January 15th. That's the date we will put on the duty statement for that particular individual.
So do we want to make that determination? Can we make that determination today?
It's too premature to make that today, simply because.
I don't think you want to for this case. If you hire someone, they find out, and they have to give 30 days notice from their previous job or whatever. That's all, and that's all done through the negotiation and the and the review process. So I probably wouldn't put that date.
Well, more importantly, the board has the option to appoint an interim executive officer if it happens after January when I leave.
Okay.
So you're covered with management either way.
So go back to the edit that we did earlier on page 6 of 6. We're going to add a sentence. This position requires approval of the director of the Department of Consumer Affairs, and we'll make sure that each page will have a footer that this duty statement was revised and adopted by the board at and insert the date, which is today for this board meeting. It was approved by the board today. Anyone have any other comment or edit?
Any comments from board members?
Great job, Nicole. Thank you. You did a great job.
So, motion to approve.
Comments from public? Seeing none? Okay, motion by Greg. Second by Edward. All right.
Is the motion to approve it with
Motion
those
to approve as
changes
amended.
that have been discussed?
Correct.
Thank you.
It does
Okay,
state
second.
on
Exactly
page
what I said.
1, authority for position, the board with the approval of the director.
Right, but the way that it's stated there is just information, I think, because you've got those other at the end, you have all the requirements, like the fingerprinting, or the oath of office, which is a requirement in the government code. I just think they should all be together.
All right, let's call for a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Oppose? Abstain? Motion carried.
So now we move on to the selection committee appointments. So again, as I discussed earlier, we recommend that the selection committee will consist of only 2 members.
I'm going to make the motion that, let your president make that a selection of the 2 selection committee
I think he needs information, and that is.
Well, he's gonna have to figure out who has time to do it
Yeah.
and
Who
talk to
wants
the
to
board
do it, who
members.
has time to do it,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Well, I would also recommend that Victor be one of the two as the president of the board.
Yeah, he will be.
I second that.
Any
I don't know if
other-
you wanted Victor, but
Any other comments from board members?
I got the votes.
What is the, so what is the final motion?
The motion is I head up the search committee, and I will delegate the authority to appoint another member to the selection committee and work with Nicole and Chris on the process. That's the motion. Motion by Ricardo, second by Ryan. And any public comments? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carried. Anything else?
Okay, so thank you for approving the duty statement and the recruitment announcement. I anticipate that with your approval, our job posting will go live by the 12th, September 12th, Wednesday. Also, the board might want to either make a motion and vote on it or delegate the authority to do additional advertisement decision to the selection committee.
I would make that motion.
If I want to be very careful about the delegation, because if you delegate, even if it's to a two-person committee, then if you delegate the board's policy-making authority, then they are back into needing to have having a meeting that complies with the Open Meeting Act requirements. So notice.
I delegate that to the president.
So the president can make that, and then there's presumably, if there's edits, if there's typos, those kinds of things can be done by your staff or by the folks that are helping.
Or could we just authorize them to post it nationwide that way?
Can we do that?
Can we do that?
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Can help
Can we,
identify.
yeah, and the staff could identify. Is it okay with the motion, staff?
That's perfect, I think it's great.
And
Motion by
the
Stan.
members will receive a copy and can circulate it as well.
Okay. Any other board members' comments? Public comments? Okay, motion by Stan, second by Greg. Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carried.
Thank you. And that
Is
will
that it?
wrap up the presentation for the executive officer recruitment.
Okay,
Thank you for
thank you
having
very
us.
much, Nico and Chris.
Thank you very much, that was
All
excellent.
right, we shall take a 10 minutes break right now. I know it's long overdue.
It is.
Okay, we are back in session. We're honored to have the ALJ judge. Your Honor, Lori Perlman will preside over the petitioners meeting. Okay, Your Honor, yours.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I am here today to work with the board. We have 5 petitions for modification or a reinstatement for each of them. And so that's what we're going to be hearing today. And the matters are being heard, obviously, before the Board of Pharmacy. And I will ask for the record to have each board member just go around and please identify yourself for the record. I'll start with Mr. Khan.
Amjad Mahmood Khan, a public member.
Maria Serpa, professional member.
Stan Weiser, professional member.
Victor Law, professional member.
Greg Whitley, public member.
Ricardo Sanchez, public member.
Albert Wall, professional member.
And Ryan Brooks, public member.
Thank you all to board members. So am I correct that we have a quorum present today?
Yes, we do.
All right. And so just to give some instructions, there are some folks here. I know there is one attorney representing an individual, and the other cases, people will be representing themselves this morning. So just to let you know that in this proceeding, the board is concerned with any rehabilitation that has happened since your license was disciplined. And the way that we'll proceed, we have an individual from the Attorney General's office here today, Ms. Tulliners, and she will be presenting your petition package, and she'll give some background in the matter. And I'll be doing some things like marking things for identification and admitting them into evidence, so there'll be some time allotted to that. After the Deputy Attorney General has made the presentation, you'll have an opportunity to make your presentation. And I know we have a gentleman here who may want to come closer. If you're having difficulty hearing, just let us know at any time.
I do.
Okay. And so just to let you know, the board has already had the benefit of reading the petition package that you submitted. So it's not necessary to repeat things from the package. You'll be getting some questions from the Attorney General, from the Deputy Attorney General, from the board. I may jump in from time to time and ask for some clarification or spellings of things. And then after the hearing, the board is going to hear all of the cases, if I understand correctly. Once they've heard all the cases, they'll clear the room, they'll go into a private closed session to deliberate on the cases. They won't be issuing any decision today. A decision will be mailed in the future to you. So with that being said, that is my preliminary. And I was going to take the case that has the attorney present first, but I'm not sure. There he is in the back. So I would have you step back from the table if you don't mind. I'm going to take your case second, and we're going to have the attorney come up on the Lloyd case, please.
Microphones today, so we, please. Thank you. They might ask you to repeat the question. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we've got everyone up at the tables and settled in, so we'll go on the record in that manner. We are on the record. It is September 7th, 2018. It is now 11 a.m. in Los Angeles. We are before the Board of Pharmacy in the matter of the petition for reinstatement of Clarence Lee Lloyd. And it's OAH case number 2018-090-144. Pharmacy Board case number 4682. As I mentioned, I'm Lori Perlman, the Administrative Law Judge, and I will take appearances starting with the Deputy Attorney General.
Good morning, Your Honor, board members, Mr. President. Desiree Tulliners, Deputy Attorney General for the people.
And could you spell your name for the record, please?
First name is D-E-S-I-R-E-E. Last name Tulliners, T-U-L-L-E-N-E-R-S.
Thank you, Ms. Tulliners.
Morning, Your Honor, President, members of the board. Ivan Petrozalka on behalf of Dr. Clarence Lee Lloyd. First name is spelled I-V-A-N, last name P-E-T-R-Z-E-L-K-A.
And then with you is?
I'm Clarence Lee Lloyd.
Good morning, Mr. Lloyd. Okay, so I'm going to turn things over to Ms. Tulliners at this point, and you can begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Preliminarily, for the record, I'd like to state that the Attorney General's Office is appearing today on behalf of the people pursuant to Business and Professions Code Section 2760.1 and Government Code 11522. First order of business, would like to mark for identification and offer into evidence as Exhibit 1 the original petition packet with accompanying documents. This would be marked as Exhibit 1.
Thank you. I will at this time mark as Exhibit 1 for identification the document packet that has just been described. And is there any objection to that coming into evidence?
No objection.
Exhibit 1 is admitted at this time.
Thank you. I believe that the Petitioner's Counsel has a copy of that exhibit.
Yes, we do.
Thank you. Next in order, we'd like to mark and admit Exhibit 2, which is the order denying reconsideration for Clarence Lloyd.
I will mark that order as 2 for identification. Any objection to that?
No objection.
2 will be admitted.
Thank you, Honor. And thirdly, I would like to mark for identification and offer into evidence Exhibit 3, which is Dr. Lloyd's agreement to electronic recording of hearing.
Thank you. That agreement will be 3 for identification. Any objection?
No objection.
3 is admitted.
Now I would like to offer a brief summary of the case for the record. In August 2013, following 2 inspections of the licensed sterile compound pharmacy premises by inspectors, for which petitioner was the PIC, the board filed an accusation against petitioner alleging 23 causes for discipline for unprofessional conduct, gross negligence, making of a false document, as well as violations pertaining to sterile compounding, record keeping, equipment, expired drug storage, and numerous violations of state or federal statutes relating to controlled substances and dangerous drugs. Following a 4-day hearing, the administrative law judge found 20 violations of pharmacy law and regulations ranging from minor transgressions to very serious violations. The ALJ also determined that the evidence at hearing established that petitioner was a dangerous practitioner, a person who could not be trusted, and that his actions put patients at risk. Petitioner's pharmacist license was revoked by decision effective December 26, 2014. The petition for reconsideration filed by petitioner was denied also on December 26, 2014. Petitioner has now filed this petition for reinstatement of his license. I am prepared to proceed with questions for the petitioner unless his counsel wishes to make an opening statement first.
I'll ask Mr. Petrozelko.
I would like to make a brief opening statement.
Yes,
if I may. Your Honor, members of the board, first of all, we'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present this petition on behalf of Dr. Clarence Lloyd. We acknowledge that these petitions are granted sparingly, and it's not a right per se to be reinstated. We also acknowledge the board's mandate of public protection as the primary and overriding objective.
I don't think that people in the back can hear you. I have to hear you.
Okay, I'll try to speak more loudly. As Mr. Lerner said, the revocation was effective December 26 of 2014. It's approximately 4 years ago. About 6 years ago, in 2012 and 2013, Mr. Lloyd had exhibited spectacular lack of professional judgment when he committed the acts that led to the revocation of his license. And the revocation, we believe, was appropriate under the circumstances. However, since the time the revocation occurred, and actually even prior to the actual revocation, Mr. Lloyd had engaged in significant remediation and rehabilitation effort, and that is why we're here today to present his humble petition for reinstatement. The person who was acting as the PIC of that pharmacy in 2012 and 2013 exhibited denial, even to the point of arrogance, when defending his actions before the board and before the administrative law judge. That is not the same person who stands here before you today. During the last nearly 6 years, Dr. Lloyd had gone through a significant transformation of both his personal and professional life, and with that, we believe that under these circumstances, as his testimony will show, reinstatement of his license to practice pharmacy would be appropriate and would be in public interest. The efforts that Dr. Lloyd have gone through were not a short-lived efforts just prior to filing this petition. The efforts were consistent and continuous throughout the period of nearly 6 years, included extensive education, self-education in the matters of pharmacy, regulatory compliance, and ethics. Dr. Lloyd, on his own, have undergone through 2 separate courses on business and professional ethics, recognizing that some of the lapses in his judgment were not only related to the profession itself, to the technical aspects, but to the ethical aspects of the profession. Recognizing his shortcomings, he's undergone the courses on his own. He spent countless hours volunteering at the Precious Life Shelter, where he provides services related to pharmacy that do not necessarily require the license of a pharmacist, but at least using his knowledge and skills to improve lives of those who are most vulnerable in our society. I believe that that will speak volumes to Mr. Lloyd's dedication to the profession and his reformation. And with that, I would hand over to Mr. Reynolds.
Let me swear in Mr. Lee at this time, if you'll be asking me questions, I assume. So if you'll raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much. And you can proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Dr. Lloyd. Can you please explain for the record why you think your license was revoked?
Yes, well, the initial actions took place 6 years ago. My license was revoked 4 years ago. When I realized the Board of Pharmacy felt it necessary to revoke my license, I was devastated, extremely embarrassed, and realized things were lacking in my life. I've gone through, I believe, a transformation over the last 4 years. Is this where I'm going with this? Just make sure that's how long? So, I've gone through a great transformation. And because of that transformation, I believe I'm a different person. I've redirected, reorganized my priorities in life. And I now feel that now feel that I have my pharmacy education, and it's greatly embarrassing. The people who gave me that education are sitting in this room. I feel that was a great gift to me. Knowledge of pharmacy, be able to help people with knowledge of pharmacy. I feel I need to be a good steward of that information. And part of my spiritual transformation is that I now feel that I have a new purpose in life, and that is to particularly reach those that are least vulnerable in our society and try to make their lives better. I made 2 great discretions. One was I didn't keep up with the latest regulations. Looking back, I realized that. The second component was an ethical one, which puzzled me at the time. But I now understand that it's important not only to be compliant with the regulations, but be absolutely transparent with those regulations and carry those regulations. I also have a new respect for the Board of Pharmacy. I'm greatly embarrassed with my, not only my transgressions, but my attitude towards the board during that period where I was when the allegations were made. That bothers me as much as anything. I personally apologize to Chief Executive Harold, and I'd like to take this opportunity to apologize to the community and to pharmacy profession and to this Board of Pharmacy. I did not treat you with the respect I should have at the time. If you want, I can go through why I feel I've been rehabilitated. I'm not sure that's a question to answer.
Not at this time. I was asking about why you believe you were revoked.
Well, I'm sorry. It was revoked because I had not kept up with the regulations, compounding regulations at the time, and because I think a large part is my demeanor during the hearing. The administrative law judge deemed that I was not truthful, and since truthfulness is such an important component of practicing pharmacy, that on that basis my license was revoked.
Do you have the petition packet?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you turn to your Exhibit A, page 31, please? 31 of 36.
Yes.
Under subparagraph C, the administrative law judge, do you see where this is the evidence established
Yes.
20 violations of pharmacy law and regulations? And then below that, in paragraph D, the judge considered your testimony to be an aggravating circumstance to those violations. Do you understand that?
Could you repeat the question?
On a paragraph C is the violations, and D below it, the judge found that your testimony was an aggravating factor in his decision, not the basis of his decision. I have concern because I've reviewed the 16 letters of recommendation that were submitted with your packet, and 13 out of 16 of them all state that the reason they believe you were revoked, or actually that your license has not been active for the past few years, was that you were untruthful at the administrative hearing. Each of those letters has the same similar statement that the ALJ concluded you had lied at the hearing, that the ALJ found you were untruthful during the hearing, that Clarence was untruthful during his hearing. 13 out of 16, none of them say that they understood that you had committed 20 major violations of pharmacy law and regulations. And I'm not sure whether those recommendations are aware of that fact.
I believe most of those 13 that you referred to were non-pharmacists. The pharmacists, I encourage them to go online where they could read the allegations against you. The public members, I did tell them I had made several errors with pharmacy. However, I believe now that the major reason my license was revoked is on truthfulness and ethical questions. There's two components. One was technical, one was ethical. I can still hear the judge saying that truthfulness is such an important component of the profession that he found that was a strike. I believe that was a major factor for why he took my license, or recommended that my license be revoked. During the hearing, the contention was that one of the witnesses for the other side was the technician who inspected my helium and my hook, who gave a different testimony than I did. And I believe that was what really irritated the judge and alarmed him that I was not truthful enough to have my license. And so, when talking to the non-pharmacist, I didn't go into a lot of details and technical problems I violated. I emphasized the fact that, in my opinion, the deciding factor was I was untruthful in the hearing. If I was untruthful there, I didn't deserve to have a pharmacist's license. These are not pharmacists. These are deacons and pastors and researchers. So I did emphasize that because it was easier. I thought it was more appropriate to emphasize the fact that I was untruthful. And as non-pharmacists, they can't attest to my abilities as a pharmacist. As members of the community, they can attest to my character. And that's what those letters were.
So, would you agree that they have no idea whether they could commend you as a safe practitioner at this time?
Well, I think a lot of them, I read the letters, a lot of them said, I'm not in a position to know whether who's a good practitioner of pharmacy or not. One lady said, she was my patient, so she tested that. She's an educator, but she tested that I was a good pharmacist for her. A lot of them said, Yeah, I'm a deacon in the Catholic Church. I can't tell you what makes a good pharmacist, but I can attest to his care, and that's why I had asked them. These are also people who have known me for a long period of time before and after, in different aspects of my life. And so I thought it was important for them to attest that they've seen a change in me, and they could attest that I am a man of good character now.
Thank you. Is there a reason that all of the letters use the phrase that they're aware of the reason your license has not been active for the past 3 years instead of they're aware that your license was revoked?
When I spoke with them, I made it clear it was revoked. And I was petitioning the Board of Pharmacy to consider reinstating my license. If they used the wrong term, they probably thought they were using the correct term, or the terms were interchangeable. But then again, I wasn't telling them what to write. These are, I believe, the ones that said that were non-pharmacists. I'm probably not familiar with the legal terms, so I don't know why they chose that name. But I made it clear my license was revoked. I no longer have a license. And I'm asking for reinstatement.
I want to ask you a couple questions about your continuing education that you submitted in support of your petition. Do you know how many hours that you've submitted that pertain to sterile compounding practice?
I don't have the number. I attend I have a lot of CEUs. Most of those CEUs were gathered, live CEUs. Those are the classes I like to go to. And generally, I try to pick CE classes that have essential information I wouldn't get anywhere else. In addition to that, on 2 occasions, I attended CE programs presented by the Florida Board of Pharmacy on new regulations, particularly pertaining to drugs. So I try to pick out classes, particularly on pharmacy law and representing. I really thought I went overboard on taking those classes on pharmacy law as opposed to other classes. But I felt that was important because, again, the 2 components of where it got me in trouble was not keeping up on regulations, as I had, as well as the ethical component.
So you don't believe that your sterile compounding practices were the biggest concern?
My understanding is that a lot of the violations had to do with not adhering to the latest regulations in things like how you keep the file, how you label the products, those types of things, as opposed to my sterile compound. I never had a problem with my sterile compounding. I never had a contamination in my room, never had a contamination in the clean room, never had a product that was contaminated, never had a product that was anything that wasn't supposed to be. I did extensive tests on my product and on my clean rooms. So I felt at that time, and I feel now that I'm competent in doing sterile compounding. Where I used poor judgment was not understanding the latest regulations, as well as a huge deficit in my ethical conduct.
You recall the cause for discipline for incorrect labeling of chemotherapy agents?
Yes, I did. I believe this is what you're referring to. I'm wrong.
No, I just was asking if you recall the certain causes.
I do recall.
Your Honor?
Yes.
I must object to this. The purpose of this hearing is not to relitigate the causes for discipline. Mr. Lloyd understands and agrees that his license was rightfully revoked, and I believe that we're not very productive relitigating and rehashing what happened 6 years ago. Dr. Lloyd acknowledges his failures and his shortcomings. I'm not sure what's the point of relitigating that.
Well, I'll ask Ms. Cullers, if you have another objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just briefly, for the people and for the safety of the profession, it's my job to make sure that Dr. Lloyd is fully aware of the basis for the revocation and that it wasn't just because he was untruthful at the hearing or generically didn't comply with the current regulations, that it was due to him being an extremely dangerous practitioner and for the substantial violations that the ALJ found that made his practice unsafe and made the pharmacy unclean, expired not quarantined drugs. I mean, I didn't want to go through 23 causes for discipline, but it seems that they all do pertain to a dirty pharmacy and poor practice, not just ethics and lack of knowledge of current regulations.
I think I will give you some latitude. I think it could be helpful to the board in assessing rehabilitation to ascertain whether your client is acknowledging the elements of wrongdoing and accepting responsibility for his actions. So I think that's where you're sort of focusing. So
Yes.
I'll allow that particular focus.
Was that a question?
There was an objection as to this line of
I don't know
question,
the
so,
answer.
okay, so I'll let Ms. Cullers continue. Was there a question pending?
So I was just asking Dr. Lloyd if he recalled that one of the causes for discipline was that there was an unclean pharmacy found to be.
First of all,
Do you recall that?
yes, I do.
And do you recall the cause for discipline for having expired drugs that weren't quarantined?
Yes, I do.
You mentioned the reporting violations. You're aware of that.
I'm sorry, what
You know that you had violated certain reporting requirements and record keeping requirements. You were aware of that.
Yes.
And you failed to list equipment on compounding records.
I have listed the instruments that on the compounding records. I did not add. The inspector said, well, there should be more listed on there, right? The needles, the syringes. I didn't have that on. I corrected that when he was there.
That there was a cause for discipline for failure to meet labeling requirements.
Okay.
Do you
Those
recall
yes, I
that?
do.
And do you recall there was a cause for failure to perform end product testing for sterility and pyrogens?
I'm aware of that charge.
Okay, I don't think that's a good use of our time to go through each charge. I think the board is aware of those.
Thank you. And that was just the summary of some of the 23, and I believe the 18th cause for discipline had been stricken at the hearing. I have some, just a couple of questions left about your speaking engagements, which are listed on page 3 of the addendum to your petition.
Give me a second.
And that's exhibit 1.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It's page 3 of 6.
Yes, sir. Yes.
You indicate that from August of 2016 to September of 2016, you were a study session instructor. And I'm not going to go through all these. Study for what?
It was a Cerritos Community College pharmacy technician program, and I was hired as a part-time instructor. It was mainly a study lab where any student in the program who was struggling could come in, and I would help them understand how to do the calculations. Mostly calculations, to be honest.
So I'm going to ask you to speak a little louder.
So I worked there during that time as a part-time instructor in the study lab.
On the same page under volunteer position / location,
Yes.
you have the heading Ask the Pharmacist.
Yes.
From 2017 to the present, you gave monthly lectures.
Correct.
Were you a licensed pharmacist from October 2017 to the present?
No, but I checked with my counsel, I'm just answering questions they have about health and pharmacy. That's my understanding. I truly believe it doesn't require a pharmacist license to do that, to give general educational information.
Did you explain that you weren't licensed?
Who did you give that explanation to?
There was a homeless shelter for pregnant women, ladies in my neighborhood. And so they, through my volunteer with raising funds for them, I got to know the founder and the director of it. And they suggested, why don't you come in and give these talks? Because not all of them, many of the women who were there had unstructured lives and had past problems with drugs, illegal drugs. And so I'm basically there, I go in there and for the most part I let the ladies choose the topic and I answer the questions. The whole purpose of that is to empower them with information so they can control the problem rather than the problem control them. So they can make better choices in life, which leads to better outcomes, to better life for both they and their children. So I did that, I'm still doing that.
Okay, so the question was, you said you told someone that you weren't a licensed pharmacist.
Yes.
Was it the director you told?
As a director and the founder.
So do you believe that the people listening to you thought you were a pharmacist?
No. Well, I'm a pharmacist, I'm not a licensed pharmacist.
Excuse me, a licensed pharmacist. So you don't think that might have been misleading to the public?
No, I do not.
I have no more questions at this time.
Okay. Did you want to ask any questions of your client?
Yes, Your Honor, if I may. Lloyd, do you believe that the decision to revoke your license in 2014 was appropriate and justified?
Yes, I do.
When you look at your practices 6 years ago and you put yourself in the position of the board, how would you act? Would you revoke that license?
Today? Yes.
If you could describe to us the rehabilitation efforts that you've gone through and perhaps give an outline of a vision for you and your professional involvement should the board decide to grant the reinstatement of your license.
Okay, as I started to inappropriately answer this question earlier, I feel like I've gone through a major transformation, both spiritual and personal. When the Board of Pharmacy decided it was necessary to revoke my license, I was devastated, extremely embarrassed. I realized things were lacking in my life. One of the first things I addressed was the ethical issue. I didn't, apparently everybody else could see it, but I couldn't, so I needed to find out about it. So I enrolled in 2 classes on ethics with the University of Santa Clara. One was on ethics in the community, ethics in the world, and the second was how to build ethics into a corporate structure. And they were web-based. It was funded by the Bill Gates Foundation, so I didn't have to pay for them. But they were quite lengthy and intensive. And I took that because I realized I need to understand what's lacking in me regarding ethics. I found it extremely rewarding. And I felt like it applied to the pharmacy world. Not only do you need to be ethical in terms of adhering to every regulation, you need to do so transparently. And in terms of building a corporation and went on, you have to have what we would call policies, procedures, and SOPs to, first of all, address shortcomings in ethics, but also have a framework to make sure that you are adhering to to the highest ethical standard, and making it apparent to your employees and your clients and businesses around you. So I found it very rewarding. I felt compelled to make amends for my errors. So at that point, I went back to my alma mater, USC, and spoke to my law and ethics professor, Dr. Fred Weissman. And I know he isn't here, but he's been a tremendous support and guidance through this procedure. And he said he would allow me to address his classroom, which I asked him to do, fourth-year students in pharmacy school. I believe the outline for my lecture is in your handout there. But basically, I address the students. I'm very honest about my personal failures as a pharmacist. I make it painfully clear to them how I failed and the ramifications of that failure. I then take them step by step what happens if the board files an accusation against you. And I try to do it in tremendous detail because I want to get their attention. My purpose is they'll never want to go down the path that I ended up going. I also try and instill in them to have enough respect in their education and their profession to want to practice pharmacy at the highest ethical and professional standards. And I also incorporate in that, discuss the role of the Board of Pharmacy. Now, I know some of our colleagues like to refer to the board as not your friend. I disagree with that. The Board of Pharmacy is our friend. We're very collegial. The Board of Pharmacy has one purpose, and one purpose only, and that is to protect the public's health from us pharmacists. We work collegially. The Board of Pharmacy has been great putting on CE programs, so we understand that. They educate us very well through the both electronic media as well as the script. However, when there is a crisis, the Board of Pharmacy doesn't change, except they may change their emphasis. Now they have to be much more serious about addressing the problems occurring in pharmacy. And in my lecture, I talked about 15 years or 20 years ago, there was pharmacies were bilking Medi-Cal for DME products. And they came into pharmacies and they demanded audits, which was appropriate. More recently, as we're all aware of, with the New England compounding scandal, that was, in my opinion, the biggest problem in the profession of the pharmacy. They had a responsibility. They needed to go into sterile compounding pharmacies and make sure that was not going to happen here. What they did was wholly appropriate and proper and ethical for what they did. And so part of my lecture is respect the Board of Pharmacy. Respect yourself as a professional pharmacist, or understand and respect the Board of Pharmacy. They're a great resource for us, but also in times of trouble, they're going to do what they need to do. They're going to come in and protect the public and make sure a failure on our part isn't going to hurt the public. And so I've given those lectures every semester. I'm scheduled to do them again at the end of this semester. And it's something I want to do even if the Board of Pharmacy finds that to have my license reinstated is something I'm going to continue going forward. I also know I needed to change. And with my new purpose, serving those who need the help the most. My community is my church community. I was active in Knights of Columbus. I went back to that. And the charity that really interested me the most was helping children with intelligent difficulties. And so I spearheaded in our area a fundraiser to raise money for a summer camp for intellectually disabled children. And I'll try to be very short with this, but along with the other Knights of Columbus councils in Orange County, in my church, I raised $10,000. We were able to put on a summer camp for intellectually disabled children, a quintessential summer camp. It's not open just to Catholics, it's open to anyone in the community. It's a typical summer camp. The The difference being when a child with intellectual disability goes to this camp, they're not different from anyone else. They're just like everyone else at that camp. They go in for a full week. We do that throughout the entire summer. And that was a charity I went into because I felt like I needed to get something back. I have to be good at fundraising, so that was one way that I could get back to them. During this time, I had this, I'm not very good with words. I had a spiritual experience which changed my perspective on life. One is I attended a retreat at a neighboring church. It was a weekend retreat, and I'm not here to preach anybody, but the title of the retreat was Developing a Personal Relationship with the Holy Spirit. As I came out of that retreat, I came out with a new purpose for my life. And realizing not only why I'm here, why we're here on this earth is to serve others, and that is our primary focus. I also, through this period, went through another spiritual experience where after much time training and formation, I became professed as a secular Franciscan. I'm a member of the Franciscan community. What makes Franciscan community from other religious communities is Franciscans don't live in a monastery, so they live out in the community. And their primary purpose is to serve the underserved in the community. They have a motto, go out and preach the gospel of the Lord, and if you must, use words. So you do it by experiential. So this really caused me to reorganize my priorities. I now have a new purpose in life, and that purpose was to serve other, be steward of my background, my education, my knowledge, to serve those in the community who most need it the most. As Pope Francis says, go out to the periphery of society and take care of those who are forgotten and disregarded. My only claim to that is you don't have to go out to the periphery. It's in our front yard. So at that time, I became director of a ministry in my church called Life, Justice, and Peace. And basically it is to realize that every human life is important, be it if you're elderly, if you're physically impaired, intellectually impaired, whatever circumstances. And so I along with my co-director, thought, how can we best address this? And we decided to put on a conference. 2 years we put on a conference. The last one was on human trafficking, which is a terrible name. It's human sexual slavery is what it is. And is one of the largest problems in our community here. I live in Orange County. It is a huge problem in Orange County and LA County, superseding both drug trafficking and superseding drug trafficking, only because the guys who are doing drug trafficking realize they can't get, it's much harder to get arrested for having a woman in your car as opposed to having a trunk full of drugs. So we put on this conference. It was very successful. We had 300 people arrive. It was well publicized on radio and in publications. And the purpose of that was to educate people of the problem in the community. We had Orange County Sheriff's Department there, the Orange County Task Force on Human Trafficking. We had a young lady who was herself a victim of sexual trafficking. And that was one way to give back to the community, to educate them so that not only they're aware of the problem, but how to recognize the problem and how to minimize the problem. As director of this ministry, when I first became involved with the Precious Life Center. Again, it's a center for homeless pregnant women. Tremendous place. That when a woman leaves there, not only have they gotten the health care that they need and the shelter, but they finish their education, they get vocational training, and they get a lot of life skills training as well. And so every year we have 2 fundraisers. I raise somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 a year to help fund this facility. It was during my encounter with that I became much closer to both the founder and the director of the Precious Life Center. And they asked me to come in and give these monthly programs, roughly an hour and a half. Not all the women, most of the women have very unstructured lives and drug problems before they came there. We have talked, I let them choose the topics. Instead of I give a discussion and there's question and answers afterwards. We have talked about how they're concerned because they were taking drugs when they became pregnant. What is the effect of these drugs? How do these drugs act in the human body? How do the drugs that I took then differ from what the doctor is prescribing now? How do they work? And how what the doctor prescribes is beneficial, but the other ones, what you're saying, weren't beneficial. We talked about the effects of crack cocaine, about heroin. The one exception.
Lloyd, I'm sorry, I think that it's probably more helpful to move on and
Okay.
discuss some other elements of your rehabilitation.
Okay.
I don't think we need that level of detail, but thank you.
So, so I have a passion for pharmacy. I'm very happy I found 2 ways to share that education in clinics that didn't require a license. I've kept up with my CE units. Basically, I've had twice the number I needed for the last 3 years. So I'm pleased that I can do a lot without my license. There's things I would like to give back to the community that I would be able to do if my license was reinstated. So with great respect to the Board of Pharmacy, I want you to consider my rehabilitation and consider that it might be appropriate to reinstate my license at this time.
Thank you. I'd like to briefly touch on the reasons for revocation, even though this is not really the forum to relitigate it. But throughout the decision, the overwhelming tone appeared to have been that you did not fully appreciate the gravity of the violations that were found in your past pharmacy. When you look at your statements and your approach to that today, do you recognize the serious nature of those violations?
Yes, I do.
If you were given the opportunity to practice pharmacy again, how would you guarantee the board that they can actually trust you with the privilege of practice of pharmacy? What makes you think that at this point of time the board can feel confident to entrust you with this great privilege?
Looking back, I think one of the big problems I had, I felt like I was working, following the regulations, but there was more up-to-date regulations that I had not complied with. So therefore, I think where I first went wrong was not to keep up completely with all the new regulations coming out at that time, involving new interpretations of regulations. And so that's why I've devoted myself to attending as many CE classes as possible, to make sure I'm absolutely up to date on regulations on pharmacy law. I attended both classes that the Board of Pharmacy has had recently. I did the original one in San Diego. I did one a couple of months ago at this location. I try to keep up what the board gives me both electronically and on the script. And when I don't know, I go out and try to find out the answer to that. A priority of mine is keeping up on pharmacy laws and regulations. Not only how to comply with them, but how does the board want me to show it if they come into the pharmacy? How can I be so transparent that it's obvious? I'm trying to do so. Nobody's perfect. I'm trying to follow those regulations. So it's not only a point of following the regulations, it's documenting that you're following the regulations, and then storing it in a retrieval fashion where it's obvious and transparent that you're trying to do so.
you, in your petition and even here, you've made a commitment to future regulatory compliance. Do you feel confident that you are capable of fulfilling that promise?
Yes, I do.
I have no further questions, sir.
Thank you. Was there any, anything additional, Ms. Collins, you
No.
wanted to add? And then I'll ask the board members now, are there any questions anyone would like to ask?
This is this stuff.
Okay, we'll start with Mr. Khan.
Thank you very much for being here, and thank you for all the work that you've done for the community. It's admirable. So, for whatever reason, if I left the profession of pharmacy for a period of time, 4 or 6 years, and then thought about returning, I would worry about my competency. How do you feel about your competency? How have you been able to maintain your competency? I've noticed the continuing education units, classes that you've taken, and although your lectures, etc., from what I read, were things that you gave to students and community, but I'm not sure it really reflected your competency. And so explain to me how you feel your competency is and how you've been able to keep it at the level it should be.
What's changed over the last few years was
It's been dramatic.
it's been dramatic. I tried to keep up on that. Obviously, I think when we practice, it's fun. So.
And I understand that, so it's a
No,
double-edged sword.
there's two classes I'm interested in taking. Originally, I went to PCCA and took their 2 of the divisions. So I'm in discussion with them about going back and doing that. There's also there's another company that does it. It's even more intense. And so, what is it? No, it's not that one. It's First Choice. I'm blanking on the name. I'm sorry about it. So I'm looking at various courses to take a refresher course before I go in, before I even think about going into a clinic. You know, that's something I need to do. If the board feels I've earned your confidence to reinstate my license, then, that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Oh, good.
And this is how I plan to do it.
Yes, we get to see your family in a wedding.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I'd like to introduce into evidence what would be labeled as Exhibit 4, and that is documentation of some additional continuing education efforts by Dr. Lloyd that has taken place after we initially filed the petition. I believe I transmitted electronic version to the board staff in case you do not have it. I do have copies.
Has Ms. Collins seen that?
Okay, so you have a copy. Do board members have copies?
We have a lot of things.
Thank you.
I'll take it. Thank you. Is it for everybody?
Yes,
Okay.
should be.
I'm going to mark as Exhibit 4 for identification, a multi-page document that is a statement of continuing education program.
These grades have been issued after the initial filing of the petition.
Do you have any objection to that coming into evidence?
No, yeah.
Okay, 4 is admitted with this.
Thank you.
that answer your question? And I'll just note that that was Mr. Weiser that had asked the question. Did that respond to the
Yes,
question?
thank you.
Okay, so I'll continue around the table if there are any other questions from board members.
Dr. Lloyd, I want to first thank you for coming here today and thank you for all your volunteer work for the community. And I really wish that a lot of pharmacists would do this before they get into trouble. I want to ask you, now in order for the board to consider your reinstatement, would you be okay if the board asked you to retake the NAPLEX and the CPJE exam?
I would prefer not to.
You prefer not to?
I've taken,
I think
it's one of the reasons I've got a lot of CE, I've taken.
I know you've taken quite a bit
year.
of CE, but that's just a standard of measurement that the board might be comfortable to see if you have accomplished it. That's why I'm asking you, so I could ask the board members to consider as part of the condition.
Understood.
And number two, based on the violations that I've seen from your case, a lot of them involve like expired products, unlabeled products. So would you attribute that to the lack of education at that time, or was this just your personality, or would you tell the board members how you would prevent that from happening again?
I'm going to answer this very carefully. I made mistakes. I own it. So I don't want to relitigate or say that what was done in the past, judgment was wrong. But I want to answer your question. In terms of labeling, there's two things that came. It was, I thought I was fulfilling the regulations. The inspector at Caseby felt otherwise. One of them was, I was preparing Avastin 1cc syringes. I had one label on there, which had all the labeling that you need on any prescription label. In addition, I had this is a carcinogen handled with auxiliary label, all on one label. Inspector Caseby said, well, no, it needs to be a distinct label. So while he was there, I made up auxiliary labels with the chemotherapy. So that was one labeling thing that got me. I thought I was doing everything. I read the law. I thought I understood the law. The inspector quite rightfully had a different interpretation. So that was one example. Another example was beyond use date, which became a very big. Remember, this is at that time. This is a huge thing. Was beyond use date, and so I'm taking the Avastin out of a sterile vial, and a sterile vial, pulling up in a sterile syringe. What is beyond use date? And I think some of the conversations is in this. I called the company that made it and asked them, when you put this into a syringe, what is beyond use date? I also, eventually, it took me a long time, I found a research article where someone had taken Avastin out of these syringes. I used the same syringe, same needles, and followed their protocol. At the time, I thought that if I used their equipment and used their research, I could give beyond use date that they had demonstrated. I was told no, that wasn't sufficient. So to answer your question, and I know I get worried, I'm sorry, Dr. Long. Some of these I thought I was following. I read the law. I thought I was following it. There was a different understanding of that, and therefore the inspector was right and I was wrong.
Okay, so do you have this issue resolved now?
Yeah, and a lot of it is so this is how I plan to treat in the future. I'm going to be very close contact with Tony Park and his law firm, and I'm going. If I have a question, I'm going to call them and ask them right away. I'm also, the board is doing a beautiful job in keeping pharmacists aware of changes in regulations or potential changes in regulations. And so, yeah, I will do everything humanly possible to be aware of not only what the regulations, but the interpretation. Is their interpretation different from mine? And that's why I rely on Tony Park and Ivan to say, am I reading this correctly?
But are you aware that the board has 2 days, Tuesday and Thursday, to call the inspector for answers? That will be a lot cheaper
Yeah, I
than
have-
call Tony.
Sorry, Ivan. Yes, and I will. I'll, you know, the board was extremely busy during this time. I did try calling during this particular time before Mr. King's being inspected my pharmacy. There was a lot going on. I couldn't get hold of him all the time I wanted him.
But in the future,
Yes.
you know where to get the correct answer.
Yeah, I'm going to call Dr. Law's pharmacy.
Not me. Call the 916. Call the inspector number. Thank you.
916-779-1403.
579-7900. 574-7900. Thank you. No further question.
Okay, thank you.
If you get your license, it sounds like you plan to go back into compounding. Is that correct?
I'm not going to say no. There's some other things that really interest me that I would love to do in pharmacy. 3 things specifically. One is I was involved with clinical trials, which I very much enjoyed. I was a contract pharmacist in pharmacy for CNS clinical trials. I wrote the policies and procedures in terms of handling medications. Before I entered pharmacy, I was in research. So this was a melding of the two of them together. And I felt like I had had an advantage in supporting new drugs being brought to market. It was very satisfying. Another area is I'm very interested in immunization and vaccinations. Since working with Precious Life Shelter, I understand I was surprised there's a lot of urban myths about vaccinations, and a good part of this population has decided not to get vaccinations from themselves or their children. I try to educate them on that point. I would love to be licensed so I can go to places like Precious Life Shelter, perform the education, and also give them the vaccinations. And there's another third area, which is my most recent interest in pharmacy, and it's somewhat personal. I'll try to be to the point. I know the time. I have a very, very, very dear friend who's suffering from prostate cancer, which has metastasized around his body. As a dear friend, I'm going through that with him. I've gone through that with him. I firmly believe that there's a role of pharmacists, an oncology pharmacist, not only prepare the medication for them, but all I want to address is the quality of life while they go through the chemotherapy. And they're fighting both the cancer and the side effects of chemotherapy. I have a personal opinion that there's a huge role a pharmacist can play in improving the quality of life while they go through this. I'm convinced of it. I'm very interested in becoming an oncology pharmacist. I'd like to be part of a multidisciplinary group and work with that oncology group to mitigate some of these deleterious effects of chemotherapy and give them a greater quality of life while they're going through the process. So those are 3 things I'm mainly interested in right now. But those are the first 3 things I would look at if my license was reinstated.
So it sounds like you may be a candidate for obtaining the status of advanced practice pharmacist.
The answer to your question is I don't know. I've looked at it very seriously. I don't know how the board would feel about that. I mean, giving me a license is one thing. I'm looking at all those options very, very seriously. I'm not going to say no. Advanced practice pharmacist is something that really, really interests me. I'm going to wait to see how the board judges this, and then I'll go from there. But it's something I'm passionately interested in. I'd love to do it. I'm not going to say no.
Thank you. That's it.
And I'll just note that was Mr. Lippy. I don't know if a transcript gets made if they have the video or just the audio. So if you could state your name before you continue.
Yeah, Ricardo Sanchez. Thank you for coming for the board. I have a question for you.
Yeah, Albert Wall. So you understand
the mistake you make
Yes,
and you know how to correct them.
I believe
So
so,
you
yes.
will not repeat in the future.
Yes.
Well, Dr. Law, I have written down here Q&A available. So if you have any question, regarding the law or the regulation, just call them because they will follow through. Not like before. Maybe before. Then
I didn't mean to denigrate the Board of Pharmacy. That
Yeah.
I'm just. It was a very, very difficult time for every one of them.
Yeah. But now is readily available, so you don't hesitate to call them. And the way I like to see our pharmacy profession, the Board of Pharmacy here, is to prevent. I mean, we are here to mainly protect consumer protection. The safety of the consumer is our most important task for us. So we would like to see things prevented from happening instead of happening and we hit you on the head with it. So that's one of the reasons we have a meeting here. So the rest of the people, have the life experience to learn from it, preventing from things happening. So I would like to see that, you make a mistake, learn from it, and let's move on, and then let's see what you contribute to the society.
Ryan Brooks, public member. Thank you for coming. I have no questions.
I think this probably concludes the hearing on this petition then. The matter will be taken under submission, and thank you all for your participation today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, let, yes. Yes. We'll have Mr. Yamasaki come forward now. Sure, of course. We're just gonna take a 5-minute break.
And then have your